basically in the zoning and landmarks. And we were talking about this briefly, obviously, zoning, buildable area, the FAR, sort of basically what you can build on the site equals what the development rights are available. And bonuses may be available. Basically, you're saying if...
you can do a couple different things. If you have, different zoning districts may give you different kind of bonuses on a lot. So you can get bonuses for something called inclusionary housing. You can get bonuses for putting in pedestrian plazas. These tend to be on bigger development sites. But there are sometimes that you can get additional area, or potentially if you purchase development rights from an adjacent lot, you can build up because the adjacent lot is going to necessarily stay low because they've sold all their development rights to you.
Bulk restrictions. So, for example, the restrictions that come from the zoning district as opposed to the FAR, there are different. So you have height limitations, setbacks. That's all in the zoning documents. So, for example, a lot of buildings will have like a 20-foot setback or 10-foot setback, and you have to figure out what fits within the building envelope. So basically, in general, what you're allowed to build on a lot is whatever the most restricted combination of the FAR and the building envelope is. So, for example, if your FAR is like 5, then even if you are able to fit that within the area, if it doesn't fit within the building envelope, functionally your FAR is still lower than that because you can't build up to the maximum FAR.
Where this, for people who might be buying at your level, where this can come into play is if you're going into, say, like an R6 residential district, and you buy a townhouse that is, say, 3 stories tall, right? And you may have an additional, 4,000 square feet that you're not, let's say 2,000 square feet available that you can build and you're taking all the usable floor area. You may not be able to use all of that square footage because the floor to floor in that old townhouse might just be too high. So you may be pushing the height limitation that is established by the bulk restrictions of the particular zoning district. So, for instance, I actually recently had a buyer of a townhouse down in the East Village. Bought a townhouse, had an additional 3,000 square feet in available rights. But when they really got into the zoning analysis, they realized that there were just, there's just like an additional 8 inches too much per floor. They ended up tearing down the entire townhouse, and they're starting from scratch at this point to maximize the use of their buildable rights, which they couldn't use because the zoning envelope was just too restricted.
So they would have looked into it a little bit earlier. They probably wouldn't have bought the property at the price they paid
No,
for
it's
it.
the price.
Okay, fair enough. Never mind. And I guess allowable use, district type, district overlay. So what you can build, where you can build it. Again, we talked about residential. You generally can't build in an industrial zone, etc.
Yeah. The last thing you want to do is find something that looks like a really great property. It's a conversion. I've got a great commercial warehouse. I'm going to convert it to residential. I'm so brilliant. And you realize that there's a zoning district that falls right on your lot line, and you're one building over from where that's permissible. Right? You've got to make sure that you've got that covered up front. And it is your responsibility as a buyer to apprise yourself of those things. Now, a good broker, if you've got a good team behind you, these things will come to light before you make a purchase. But there are certainly cases of people who have, just stumbled into thinking that they're getting a really good deal on really good property because look what was done next door. I mean, did the same thing.
But next door is a different district, and you're screwed.
Next door is a different zoning district, and you're screwed. Mm-hmm. And that happens.
And we're a little low on time, so we can kind of just gloss over a couple of these other ones. We kind of covered landmarks pretty much. Basically, if you're in a landmark district, they have to kind of approve pretty much anything, depending on the level of control they have. Sometimes the building's actually the landmark protected, sometimes just the district is. Those are varying degrees. Usually involves either public or private hearings at the staff level, and it does add cost and time to your approval process. And also, there's no guarantees you'll get through what you want. You control a lot about what you can and can't get approved. So if you're buying into a Landmarks Preservation Commission area in a district, you have to be aware of what that means. It could affect the value negatively if you want to do certain things, or if it has protected the value of a building that has historic value, then it may actually help the value, depending on, again, what the goal of the person buying is. And the DOB, they control everything. Everything's got to be filed. Someone like myself will go ahead and get you through that process. We'll talk to you about what needs to be drawn. And then the drawings that we draw as architects or engineers, they can see the approval process are somewhat different from the drawings we draw to get the thing built to a contractor. They're different sets of drawings that have different information. So there's just different processes that go through that I won't bore you with details of. Zoning essentials in general when you're purchasing, understanding kind of what the resolution means. And we kind of covered some of this, zoning basics. They play a role in determining the use and occupancy you can allow to use. The envelope is the three-dimensional space created by the designated setbacks and height restrictions. So it's kind of what you can build with the FAR. And the maximal building area versus usable area are somewhat different. The property can be built up to the combination of the most stringent restrictions. So again, like if you have an FAR and you have a building envelope,
You have illustrations on
we have illustrations on this too. Okay, well, real quick, if you want to kind of skip this, residential districts.
Yes.
We don't really care about this, I guess. This is just general districts, and you can look at the slides we email them to. Illustrations of FAR. Basically, this explains how FAR works. If you have a 10,000 square foot lot with a 1 FAR, that means you can just build 10,000 square feet. Same thing with a 2 FAR means 2,000 square feet. So then basically, how you lay out the building, you can't go over that amount of square footage at floor level. Something to be aware of. If you combine that then with the building envelope, or the sort of zoning envelope, there's certain things you have to fit within. This shows a building that's actually being put within the red, which is the building envelope. It shows the setbacks, the height, the mechanical restrictions. So basically, all of that's in the zoning documentation, the zoning, what's the term for it? I always forget. Zoning resolution, which is very opaque, and even a lot of architects don't quite understand. So it's something you muddle through. But basically, it shows that every sort of setback, every red line indicates something that has to be set back. And the reason zoning resolutions exist is to sort of protect like the rights of other property users in public use. Without zoning resolutions to limit FAR and to limit setbacks, you'd probably have a lot more even taller towers at the limits of what engineering would support for the land rights. So they could basically, yeah.
To see an example, go to Lower Manhattan, which, there was no zoning resolution until 1918.
Yeah.
And so what happened is, down there, everybody built on their parcel of land vertically, and that's why you get the canyons in Wall Street, because it's
very
just,
dark.
Dark, and people were building out to the maximum dimensions of their lot. It was actually the construction of the Equitable Building in 1918 that was that spurred the development and zoning resolution in Manhattan, the first zoning resolution, I should say, which was then modified in 1964. And now we're talking about modifying it once again, because it's just been, since 1964, and this is the thing that's tough about the zoning resolution, which is why it would be difficult for you guys, if you go out and buy a property, to just sort of read through the zoning resolution and figure out what's going on. There are so many amendments and sort of overlays and local laws and so forth, that even as architects, you hire zoning consultants.
Yeah, because we're not.
Know all the little minutiae about what's affected. So, like when I'm dealing in commercial property, while I as an architect have a lot more knowledge of the zoning resolution than most commercial brokers, and I can sit down and read it, I still end up consulting people when it really, when push comes to shove, and particularly on larger parcels, there's stuff that.
Liability purposes, you don't want to have to make that call. I mean, because if you sell it and he's wrong, you want to have a zoning professional do that. And yeah, as an architect, for a huge job, while I'm completely qualified to make these assessments myself, still, because there are specialists who can do it faster and more efficiently, it would be something I would consider hiring myself as well. I guess just closing out, sort of, if you want to secure your property, we found the property we want, we found what we want to do with it, we know what we want to do. How do you get it? Like, how do you make the move? And I guess one thing is you got to research. You want to basically look at what the current market. There's lots of websites that are available. Be aware of what you want out of the property. Have like a set of goals in mind. But at the same time, understand what your dollars can get and be willing to adjust that depending on what your investments are. I know most people will start their search looking for something, see what their available capital is, and try and make the best judgment on what their return on investment will be, and what they have. Financial. Pre-approval from lender, distinct from pre-qualification. Do you want to sort of delve into that?
Yeah, so you guys familiar with the distinction between the two, pre-approval versus pre-qualification? Okay, the difference is this. Pre-qualification is you go to a lender and you say, I would like to have a loan. Here's my financial information. They look at it and they say, yeah, based upon this stuff, I feel pretty confident that you will qualify for a loan of X. Pre-approval is that you bring your stuff in and the lender says, thank you, I'm going to take this and talk to our underwriters, we're going to pour through it, and I will come back and give you a number of what we will approve you for. So pre-approval, particularly in a market like this, is much more important. When things were hopping in 2006, 2007, pre-qualifications were fine because basically anybody could get a loan anyway. But now the approvals are tight. You want to be able to go in for a purchase with the pre-approval so that a seller is confident that you already have your banker lined up and your banker is willing to make a loan to you, provided that the specific property passes muster with the bank. So pre-approval, not pre-qualification.
And the because we're short on time, I'll kind of run through the last slide. Basically, we just talked about when you go to a co-op, or anything really, you want to have the statement of net worth, you want to have all the information that basically, and a good broker will be able to walk you through what you need as your financial qualifications to get property. They'll be able to walk you through the basics.
This applies for commercial lending as well. But commercial lending is going to be even, more data heavy in terms of the return on investment and operating costs of capitalization rate of a particular property.
And I guess just also you want to assemble your team. So basically, in most properties to start off with, it depends on what the level of difficulty of the exercise is, but you want to start really at one of two places. A real estate professional is usually your first contact, honestly. If it's going to be something that involves a lot of financial sort of considerations, such as 203K loans, then you're going to really want to maybe get also the bank or the lending people involved. I'm probably your second call if you want to figure out if you want to do something. Your architect or your contractor really is someone you want to have involved early on to help you assess how much these things are worth to do.
Well, then let me ask you, how much does your team cost? I mean, I guess it's going to vary per
0 to infinity.
Right.
I guess actually real estate
will cost you 0
until you buy.
I should say 96% of the time it will cost you 0 because the broker is paid through the seller.
Yeah.
Except in some commercial deals, but and the occasional residential deal. But that's not going to cost you much. Generally, the architect.
It depends on how you structure it. I mean, for example, let's say you already have the property, you have an idea of what you want to do. Usually architects charge on a percentage construction cost usually. So for example, we'll look at a budget, we'll do a couple sketches, or even just verbally talk to a contractor or some people we trust about it and say yours is, $300,000 renovation, and ours will be somewhere, 10, 11, 12% of that. So you're kind of like, 30, something like that. That's usually pretty much all inclusive. Now, early on when you're doing a property, an architect will often go ahead and be willing to do it for a small hourly fee to help you out, just to do a few sketches if you want to. If you want consulting to start, hourly rates vary widely. You're not going to get a licensed architect under usually $100 an hour. But at the same time, you can talk to them and figure things out.
I always knew. I mean, when I was practicing, if it was a client who I knew and I
was going to go through,
I would just do it.
Of course, throw it in,
But certainly when I was young, starting my practice, I was always getting calls from people who wanted me to come out and evaluate things and do budget estimates for them and so forth. And after a couple of those, I was like,
they kind of went through,
I don't need to be doing my work for free for these people who are going to move on to do something else with someone else.
Yeah.
So
it really depends on the amount of work you need done too. And generally, in most climates, the agent and the architect are willing to at least talk to you for free and see what you want to do. So if you have a property in mind, and especially if you have a PDF and you just want to talk to them briefly, they can usually help you out for an hour or two, just talking, see where it goes. I just did a conversation with a bar where I did a quick sketch because in the same sort of thing, I know the guy, I'm getting the job if it goes through, so I'm like, fine, I'll do the sketch. And they're negotiating for the space now. I'll get the job next week if it goes through. And if it doesn't, then I know the guy, we've made contact, and I'll get the job in the future. So I'm not really worried in that case. Residential is a little different because it often is a one-shot. There's not often as much repeat business, so you don't always know the person coming in.
the lender not going to charge you anything because they will make their money on the commission once the loan is closed.
And they will make a lot more than anybody else in the room, including you. So it doesn't really matter.
So the one thing that can really cost you money is an attorney. They're going to be charging you once they're getting involved in the nitty-gritty. So if you're getting into a complex commercial deal where you're going to be bringing people in up front to help you with the analysis of the property and structuring contracts and so forth, there you may be out $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. Or if you're looking at some real big game, about $600 an hour for land use attorneys.
Way more expensive than us.
Yeah.
Should have gone to law school.
Right, but for the most part, these people are going to be working with you with the desire, with the expectation that when the deal closes, they're going to be making their money.
Okay, so this is the last slide, so I'll let you blow through it real quick, and then we actually, we only have room day 3. That's okay, because we can get a pint if you guys want to do the conversation as well, too. We can do that, too. So, why don't you go through the slide?
Okay, so let's see, this is how you make an offer. First thing you want to do is identify the property, the principles, and what you are offering. So you want to list the subject property, that which you are going to buy, and identify the block and lot number. You identify the offerer, that is you, and the offeree, who is selling it to you. And if either or both parties are an LLC or similar, identify them as such. Ideally, if you know who the attorneys are, list them, and then state the amount in both text and number, how much you're offering for the property. Now, the offer is non-binding, but what you are doing is trying to A, present yourself as professionally as possible, and B, answer as many questions as possible prior to going into the contract negotiation, so that all the information is laid out in front. The next thing is important. You want to state the contingencies to the offer. If the offer is contingent upon financing, you absolutely want to make that clear. That is, if my bank is not going to approve the purchase of this property, the deal is going to be off. Cash offers, obviously, as they say, cash is king. If that shows up on an offer sheet, it's going to make a seller take notice. And then there's something that's called a non-contingent financed offer, which is you're telling the seller, I'm going to try and finance this purchase, and I may be held up for 30 days while I'm trying to get the financing in place. But if the financing doesn't come through, I'm going through with the purchase anyway. So that's sort of a middle ground. You want to describe any other contingencies that you have for the purchase. So if you're going to have a home inspection done, you want that done up front, and if the property doesn't pass inspection, the deal's going to fall through. The seller has certain obligations to remove violations, to repair certain defects, whatever the case may be. If there are tenants there that you want vacated, that should be made clear in the offer. And then you want to describe any fittings, furniture, or non-fixed items which you want to come with the property. So the bicycle in the hallway needs to stay, or whatever the case may be. But things that are, if you were buying an old townhouse that had a nice, nice fixtures, say blown glass fixtures, you would want to make clear that those things were staying.
Because they're not recessed.
They're not fixed.
They'll pull them off the walls.
Yeah, if they're not fixed items, if they look kind of like they're part of the property, but they are not fixed, the seller has the right to remove those and take them with them. And particularly, nice old property that's going to have a certain value. So you want to make sure that you are identifying that things like that are staying.
And that's where a good property lawyer comes in too and helps you draft that out.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of thing. The reason you want this clear in the offer is that both, it's going to avoid conflict down the road, and 2, it's giving the attorney who's going to be drafting the contract guidance on what they're supposed to be doing. So we get all this stuff in rather than having to ask these questions later, or worse yet, find out after you've closed, you walk in and find all the things that you thought were so beautiful stripped out.
And time.